Hey everyone, how you doing? I want to welcome you all to this leadership virtual speaker showcase extravaganza, as I like to call it. Super happy to be here today. Super excited to have all of you participants here with us today. As you can tell, I am not in my normal studio. I'm actually in the lobby of a hotel. Today, literally this morning, we found out that our Wi-Fi was shut down. There was shutdown in the area. And so I've been straggling all over the city to find a place where I could be here with you today to host as well as speak later in the day, and found a location. So I'm very grateful to be here, which kind of ties into what I'm going to be talking about later, dealing with leading through pain and challenges and obstacles and all that wonderful stuff. But without further ado, I want to just first of all say thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. I know that you have a lot going on, but the fact that you are here, we are appreciative, we are grateful, and we value your time. For those who don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Joshua Fredenberg. Not only am I an international speaker and leadership consultant, but also the president of the Circle of Change Leadership Experience, which is a national conference that is focused on preparing students for career leadership success. So we're getting ready to jump into this, but before we get started, I just want to see who's here in the session with us. So for the next 30 seconds, my virtual producer, Michael Flotron, is going to play some music. And I just want you just to light up the chat and let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and exactly what you do. Michael, play the music.
Out loud. I don't know if I could ever go without watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar. Strawberries on a summer evening, baby, you're the end of June.
All right. So we have one person that chimed in from Roxborough, North Carolina. Vanessa, is great to see you. I see Romina. Thank you so much. Penn State Beaver in the house. Brina, David Walker from Orlando. Awesome. Morgan, great to see you as well. Again, thank you all so much for chiming. I see Joe, Delton, Jared from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. Yes, I love it. Howdy, Cindy from McAllen, Texas. Okay, wonderful. Awesome to see all of you here today. And then we have Montgomery from Chi-Town, Chicago. By the way, I'm a Bears fan. Go Bears. But so good to see all the wonderful people coming from across the country to join us today. Just want to give you a set of ground rules. So throughout this next hour and 15, hour and a half, we're going to literally have about 4 different speakers, and each speaker is going to have 13 to 15 minutes to share their nuggets of wisdom as it relates to leadership success. And then afterwards, if they're going to be able to give you information, if you are interested in potentially bringing them to your campus, these are all good friends of mine that I know have incredible content that I know are going to deliver a great message for all of you today. So you are in for an incredible program, virtual session. Again, you have hundreds and thousands of students that have been impacted by these incredible speakers, and they have some incredible information to share today. And so without further ado, we're going to introduce my first speaker. He's coming from the Midwest in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he is no stranger to speaking. He's been speaking for several years. He's an incredible speaker, author, consultant, mentor, leader, and so many other things. Without further ado, if you can please give a warm welcome for my friend, Dr. Jermaine Davis. Dr. Jermaine, it's in your hands.
Thank you, Joshua, and thank you everyone from tuning in. I want you to think of this question here. What informs your leadership? I want you to think about that. So I'm going to give you a stat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here's what research says. Within the first 7 seconds of people seeing you and interacting with you, they form a first impression. Now let's put this into the context of being a leader. People form first impressions constantly about our leadership. So one of the things I want you to think about today is, what is your leadership approach? And I want to invite you to think about being an unorthodox leader. There are so many individuals who are afraid to be an oddity. They're afraid to be strange. They're afraid to be different. So they just go along with the status quo. One of my favorite books is a book written by John L. Mason. and it's called The Enemy Called Average. And then there's John Mason says, we are all born originals, but most will die copies. Question, when you show up to lead, do you bring you or are you hiding you? So let's explore, what does it mean to be an unorthodox leader? So what informs my leadership? Everyone, I see that Chicago is on here. I was just in Chicago last week speaking, and I grew up on the west side of Chicago. So I graduated from Elmhurst College, which is in Elmhurst, Illinois. But I remember being 18 years young, and I had a psychology professor by the name of Dr. Gross. And in this picture, in this building, Hammersmith Chapel, I'll never forget, we spent 1 week studying in this philosophy course, this question here: does the end justify the means? And so I want you to think about this as a leader, whether you're leading in an institution, for a for-profit organization, nonprofit, government, your church, your mosque, your temple, your synagogue, it doesn't matter. All organizations have goals that they're trying to achieve. So here's my question to you. What's more important, achieving a goal or how you get to the goal? And I want you to think about this with regards to being an unorthodox leader. Yes, we need to achieve our goals as an organization, because if we don't achieve our goals, we're not fulfilling our mission, we're not living our values, we're not bringing the vision to fruition. But I want you to think about this as a leader. The end, the outcome, yeah, that matters. But how you get there matters as well. Let me give you an example. I work with some institutions and some organizations, and they are so goals focused. They're so focused on the outcome that when they look behind, they get there, but they've destroyed the morale of their team. They've destroyed the motivation. They've destroyed the momentum. So I want you to begin to think, yes, the end matters, but how I get there. See, if you achieve your goal, but people are burnt out in the process, is that success? If you achieve your goals and then people quit your student organization, people quit volunteering, people don't want to work for your institution or organization, is that success? So at 18 years young, that began to inform my leadership. So I knew at 18, I needed to do something different as a leader. What else informed my leadership? I went to a high school that was downtown Chicago. In this building here, I went to a high school called Chicago Metro. And it was right on 33 East Congress, right in the heart of downtown Chicago. Now, we were not a traditional school, but we did amazing things. So we actually rented out 3 floors in this corporate building. And I remember being at Metro, I had to take a class. I had to take a course called physics. Now, maybe you're a mathematical genius, maybe you love the sciences, but this was a challenge for me. I had to wrestle and grapple with how to pass physics. But I want to tell you, I got a C in that course. But one of the things that informed my leadership was when my physics teacher, Craig Lasota, taught this concept. He talked about the law of inertia. Now, everyone, I want you to think about this. Great leaders, and especially in the new era, should be thinking about, how do I challenge the law of inertia? The law of inertia says this: an object or force will continue to move in the same direction unless acted upon by an outside force. Now, here's one of the things I want to share with you. As a leader, there are going to be times when you have to challenge 2 kinds of inertia. You're going to have to challenge your own inertia. What do you mean? Sometimes we get comfortable. We get complacent. We get lazy. So you got to shake up your leadership. And then sometimes within organizations and institutions, guess what happens? People get comfortable. They get lazy. And then if something is working, they keep doing it. But sometimes I don't really think about Is this the best approach? Yes, you're yielding results, but are you yielding the results that you need? And are the results you're yielding, do your people still buy into the mission, the vision, the values, and the goals? So I want you to begin to think about, how do you challenge your own inertia? I think about unorthodox leadership in this context. Here's what I mean by unorthodox leadership. Doing what is different to make a positive difference in the lives and careers of others. Let me say that again. Unorthodox leadership is doing what is different, is doing something different to make a positive difference in the lives of others. Now, I want you to think about the word unorthodox. Unorthodox is when you do not accept that which is normal, that which is traditional, or that which is usual. So what am I inviting you to do? I'm inviting you to think differently. I'm inviting you as a leader to really think about how to be the best leader, how to be more engaged, how to be more inclusive. So I'm inviting you to be unorthodox. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some traditional things that we should keep, that we should preserve. And then there are some things that the status quo has been doing and no one challenges those things. And I'm inviting you to look at opportunities up, down, and across your organization or institution and look for opportunities to demonstrate your unorthodox leadership. And remember this, the ultimate goal of the unorthodox leadership philosophy is this: I'm going to make a positive contribution in the lives and careers of others. So I am not saying be different for the sake of being different, to be disruptive and it cause chaos. I'm not saying that. The implication here is that we're going to make a positive difference in the lives and careers of others. So here's what I want to share with you. Now, everyone, I'm a communications professor and an organizational leadership professor. As I stated, I'm from Chicago, but I live in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I teach communication and leadership courses. And every semester I teach this philosophy: practice the carpenter's rule. And the carpenter's rule says, measure twice, cut once. I'll say that again. Measure twice, cut once. So I want you to think. Now, I'm not a carpenter, but at one of the institutions I teach, we actually have a carpentry program. And as a leader, we got to measure things. What do you mean measure things, Jermaine? When I say measure things, I am saying be aware of people's communication approach, your communication approach. And here's what I want to share with you. You can have the right message, but delivered at the wrong time, and that could lead to communication chaos. So here's what I want you to think about. Here's what the carpenter's rule says: never have a critical conversation without first thinking about, what are my goals? And I want you to think about this. In communication, we call it your communication bluff. If you're taking notes, put this in your notes: BLUF. Communication bluff is your bottom line up front. Think about this. Have you ever been in communication with a person and they were all over the place? They were throwing so many things at you that you were like discombobulated. You're like, oh, what is going on? Great leadership is about identifying your goals. Here's what research says: no more than 3 things at a time. You know why? Because we can overwhelm people. So never engage in a difficult dialogue, never engage in a courageous conversation without first thinking about, what's my communication bluff, which stands for bottom line up front. As a result of me conversing with this individual or these stakeholders, what do I want them to take away? Lastly, give context before content. Everyone, I can do a whole presentation on this, but I want to share this with you. Context is the why. Content is the what. Great leaders provide the why before they give the what. Now, sometimes very task-oriented people, they go straight into the what. And here's what I want to share with you. If you want your message to be considered, if you want your message to be deeply listened to, provide individuals with the context before the content. The context is why. It helps to shape the content. I have a few things I want to share with you with my time left. And here's a third thing that informed my leadership, everyone. My first career, professional job out of college, is I worked for Frito-Lay. I tell people I was a chip hustler. I hustled chips and dip throughout Minnesota and Wisconsin. I managed 20 to 25 route sales associates. And in this picture is my boss, Wendy. He was my first mentor, my first sales mentor. And he says, Jermaine, what is your approach to leadership? And as I begin to close out, I want you to think about this. We all have multiple ways we show up as a leader, but I want to leave you with this. There are people who are more task-based, and there are people who are more relationship-based. Now, you may demonstrate a little bit of both, but we all have an inclination. Like, I am more relationship-based, which means I focus on the people and the culture and the environment, because I understand that if the people aren't psychologically and emotionally and physically safe, they can't do their great work. So I used to spend a lot of my time at Frito-Lay making sure that I created an environment for people to thrive, succeed, and flourish. That was my intentionality. And then there are task-based people who focus on the goals and the work. And remember, we gotta get stuff done. So here is what I want to leave. The sweet spot. The sweet spot of leadership is when you are focused on the goals and the outcomes, and you care about the people and the climate and the culture in which they do the work. And my friends, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And my friends, here's what I want to share with you. It's not either or, it's and. So I'm going to leave you with this. You must be willing to go slow before you can go fast. And at the heart of leadership, you must build trust. You must earn trust. So go slow before you can go fast. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joshua.
Awesome. That was so wonderful. Give it up for Dr. Jermaine Davis. He shared so many nuggets of wisdom. One of the things that he did say that just inspired me is I have a definition of character. And a lot of people deal with morals and values, but I like to define character as an ability to meet the demands of the task and the people you represent in an excellent manner. And so when Jermaine said that sweet spot, he brought the task and relationships together as one. And I thought that was so powerful as it relates to leadership. He talked about the inertia. He talked about the carpenter ruler. He talked about the importance of leadership just being about making an impact. And I think that's so important as well. And really quickly, while Jermaine is still there, Jermaine, for those that may be interested in bringing you to their campus, their organizations, really quickly, would you be able to tell them how they can do that? Because I want to make sure that we let people know about that as well.
Listen, they can Google me at drjermainedavis.com, jermainedavis.com, and I'm very active and visible on LinkedIn, Dr. Jermaine M. Davis. So thank you.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, Dr. Jermaine Davis. So excited to have you today and just setting the tone for the rest of the day. Getting ready to move into this next presentation where I'll actually be speaking now. But before we get into it, I'm going to share a quick clip with you from Ray Lewis. It's a 2-minute clip, but it sets the stage for what we're getting ready to get into for these next 13 minutes. Here it goes.
I've been fortunate over the past few days to speak to people that have been close to you during various points of your life. The 3 qualities almost every single person I spoke to spoke about you having were being very trustworthy, incredibly passionate, and this intense hunger for knowledge. And you spoke to it some already, but what do you think most makes you an effective leader?
I've learned to lead through pain.
How so?
Very young age. Very young age. You know, growing up without a father, you know, and as a man, the things that I share with men now is, you know, the scariest thing that people don't slow down and ever think about is men's silent thoughts, those thoughts that they don't share with anyone. You know, at a very young age, I had to keep those thoughts to myself. Couldn't share those thoughts with mom as much as you thought you could, because I couldn't make mom understand what, as a man, I was actually going through. Pain creates a lot of loneliness because a lot of people deal with pains by themselves. And from a childhood, that's been bred and just forget everything else. Just work. Just keep working. And at the end of the day, what I found out very quickly is the only thing that follows work is results. You may see them sooner or you may see them later, but that's the only thing that follows work is results. And that's what I think pushes me so much as a leader, is everything that I've been through is to make sure man don't have to walk through that by themselves. Anybody can praise all of my accomplishments, but until you know my story, and that's what puts this taste and thirst in my mouth, never to stop.
That was that was a powerful presentation by Ray Lewis. And the reason I shared that video as I begin this presentation is because it was literally about 5 months ago when I was on the road and I had an opportunity to visit the Bay Area where I'm actually from. And when I was visiting the Bay Area, I actually had learned that my grandmother was on the verge of making the transition into after death. And at this moment, there was a lot that was going on in my mind. There was a lot of stress, just a lot of memories that were going through my mind as it related to my grandmother. Unfortunately, during this time, I couldn't stay because I had all these obligations as far as speaking, as far as traveling the country, as well as taking care of my family. But my goal was that within 3 weeks, I was going to get back to the Bay Area in time to at least have that one last moment with my grandmother. And so I was on the road for about 3 weeks. I was traveling the country, checking up on my grandmother and just getting prepared for this experience where I was going to have that last moment with my grandmother to really begin to share with her just, those final last words before she actually made the transition. And as I was landing into the Bay Area 3 weeks later, I was literally getting ready to go see my grandmother. I had all these expectations. I had all this thoughts in my mind. I was ready to have that final conversation before she made the transition. When I step off the plane, I get the word from my mother that my grandmother just passed away. And I got to be honest with you, I was in complete shock at this moment because in my mind, first and foremost, I knew that I was never going to see my grandmother again. Number two, I was upset because I was like, man, if I would have came back earlier, if I would have just really maximized that moment when I was there 3 weeks ago, maybe that could have been my moment to give my last words. But the unfortunate thing is I was unable to do that. And I was just there in the Bay Area and just trying to figure everything out. What am I going to do? How are we going to navigate this situation? Is my mother going to be okay? I mean, there were all these thoughts that were running through my mind. And while I was going through this experience and I was in the Bay Area and I was confused, I was uncertain, I was frustrated, I had all these emotions that were going on, I still had the responsibility to lead. I still had the responsibility to take care of my family. I still had obligations with my speaking, with my business. I still had obligations with a national conference that we're literally about 45 days away from doing in Miami, Florida. And so there was all these responsibilities that were happening, but yet there was just a moment with my grandmother, with someone that's been there for my entire life. And on the inside, I was just full of agitation and just frustration and hurt and pain. And all these things were just going through my mind at this direct moment. And it was at this moment where I really began to learn a vital lesson. And the lesson that I learned is I learned that if I'm going to be an effective leader, if anyone's going to be an effective leader, then they're going to have to be effective at dealing with internal challenges and stepping up despite what's going on in your personal or external life. And that's just, I discovered at this moment after 15, 16 years of getting a master's in organizational leadership, a doctoral in organizational leadership, being the captain of a basketball team. It was at this moment where it became very real to me that as leaders, Not only do we have to deal with pain, not only do you have to deal with hurt, not only do you have to deal with frustration, with trauma, and a variety of other things, but there are moments in the midst of our greatest challenges internally, we still have to show up. We still have to have a smile on our face. We still have to be the best that we can become. We still have to make sacrifices for people. We have to still do our part to ensure that not only are we getting the job done as a leader, but really more importantly, what we're doing is taking care of the people that we have the opportunity to serve as a leader. It was at this moment that it became real to me that if we're going to be effective leaders of the 21st century, we have to understand, how do you lead through pain and deal with the challenges of pain when you still have to show up every day and be an effective leader? In essence, when you're dealing with a toxic culture or toxic leadership, as a leader, I still got to be my best. When you're dealing with personal challenges, obstacles, frustrations, uncertainty, I still got to be my best as a leader. When you're dealing with betrayal, criticism, unfair judgment, I still got to be my best as a leader. When you're dealing with when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when you're emotionally and mentally fatigued, I still have to be my best as a leader. When you're dealing with rejection, disappointment, and even failure, I still have to be my best as a leader, because the demand of great leadership requires that. And it's one of the reasons I love this quote by Dr. Samuel Chan in his book, Leadership Pain. He says, if you're going to be an effective leader, not only do you have to develop the capacity to deal with painful experiences and challenges, but he says you have to learn how to navigate, overcome, and lead well despite those painful moments. I love this concept because what Dr. Samuel Chan understands is he understands that if I'm going to be an effective leader, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be painful moments. There's going to be moments where I'm going to be frustrated, where I'm going to be agitated. And just to make it very clear, he's not saying to run away from the pain. He's not saying to cover up the pain. He's not saying to say there's no pain at all. As a matter of fact, what he tells us to do is to embrace the pain and to learn how to still lead, how to still navigate despite the pain that you're actually going through. And this became so real to me a few months ago when I was dealing with the challenges of my grandmother and still was required to step up, still was required to lead, to be my best, to give my best self on a daily basis. And I'm going to be honest with you, it was tough. There were moments where I just had to just stop and just sit for a moment. There's even moments today when I just think about my grandmother and think about the fact that on Mother's Day, I couldn't give her a call. Think about the fact that when I was sick, I couldn't give her. There's still moments where I'm dealing with the pain, I'm dealing with the grief, but still, as a leader, I have the responsibility to show up not only for my family, but I have the responsibility to show up for the people that I serve. I have the responsibility to show up for the people that I've been given the opportunity to serve as a leader. And quite frankly, I know that my grandmother would be proud. I know if my grandmother was here today, she would say, Dr. Jarrett, she would say, Joshua, she would say, you can't stop. Keep shining. Keep letting your light shine. Keep making an impact. Keep doing your part to make this world a better place. She would be cheering me on right now. But truth be told, there's still moments where there's hurt. There's still moments where there's pain. There's still moments where I feel overwhelmed. I feel stressed out. There's still moments I'm at the point where, you know what, should I just give up? There's still moments. What I'm so excited about is through this challenge and through this obstacle, I've become more clear. I've developed more clarity about specific things that I can do in order to help me to navigate these painful experiences as a leader. For these next few moments, I want to share with you 3 specific things using the ABCs that I think are critical as it relates to leading through pain. Now, again, there's so many more things that we can talk about, but because of time, I only have time to give you 3. And I'm going to give you 3 that I think will be relatively important right now. The first concept is this, as it relates to the ABCs of leading through pain and staying motivated, is you have to activate your purpose. Now, when I say activate your purpose, I want to be very clear. When we deal with purpose, I define purpose as the passionate reason why you do what you do. In essence, when it comes to activating your purpose, not only does it consist of identifying the passionate reasons why you do what you do, but it's also taking the time to write and review the passionate reasons why you do what you do on a consistent basis. In essence, when we do it, this concept of activating purpose, we do it the concept of becoming aware of the passionate reasons why you do what you do. And then number two, taking time to write those passionate reasons down and then using those as motivation, as encouragement, and as strength to continue moving forward on a daily basis. This is what I call as it relates to activating your purpose. Now, I see in the chat, Ashanti had a sincere question as she relates. She says, is powering through and continuing to lead a damaging notion, encouraging leader to ignore? I'm not saying, Ashanti, as I said earlier, no, it is not. I am not telling you to ignore the pain. As a matter of fact, I am telling you to embrace the pain. I'm telling you to be real about the pain. I am telling you to be authentic about the pain. But in the process of being authentic, in the process of being real about the pain, you're developing coping skills to hopefully help you to navigate the pain. I am not here to tell anyone that you just brush the pain away and that the pain does not matter. No, as a matter of fact, even in the book, Dr. Samuel Chan, he says to embrace the change. He says to address the change and then to activate these coping skills in order to deal with the pain. And so this is where purpose comes in for me, because when I'm reminded of my purpose, when I'm reminded of why I'm here, when I'm reminded of why I'm a leader, when I'm reminded of why I desire to speak, to serve and make an impact in the world, that gives me strength, that gives me energy, and that gives me the power to continue to move forward. And this became real with my grandmother. I'm going to be honest with you, and here again, it's just again, when my grandmother passed away, y'all, I was sad. I was hurt. There was a lot of pain. And I could have sat there and said, you know what, I'm not doing nothing. I'm taking a month off. I'm taking a year off. And there's nothing wrong with that. I could have done that. But I decided because of my passion and my responsibility for me personally towards my family, towards the people that I serve, I wanted to keep going forward. And what I did is I activated this concept. I identified, why does it matter? Why do I need to get up? Why do I got to keep pushing forward? Why? As I began to develop this why, it began to give me motivation. It began to give me excitement. It began to help me to understand that in the midst of the challenge, there's still a purpose that has to be done. There's still lives that have to be changed. And here's the caveat. As I begin to move forward and as I begin to make a difference, not only did I feel better, not only did I get strengthened, but most importantly, I know that in heaven, my grandmother was smiling on me. I know my grandmother was happy because not only as a speaker was I expanding her legacy, was I teaching the lessons that she taught me, but more importantly, as she always wanted to do, I was continuing to make an impact in the lives of people within my community, my nation, and my world. And one of the things that enabled me to keep moving forward was activating my purpose. The second thing that I want to share with you is you got to build from the right perspective. Here it comes again, Ashanti. When it deals with building from the right perspective, number one, it consists of not only embracing the challenge. Again, I'm not covering up the challenge. I'm not saying the challenge is not there. No, the challenge is real. The challenge hurts. The challenge is painful. As a matter of fact, I may need some support to talk through this challenge. But in the midst of embracing the challenge, I am also seeking out lessons, communities, and moments of growth that can lead to transformational outcomes. And that's just one of the things that I've discovered that in the midst of our most challenging experiences, in the midst of the most heartbreaking moments, there's always a lesson, there's always an opportunity, there's always a moment for growth that can lead to a transformational impact. But in order for that to happen, I have to have the right perspective of the situation. And I had a story to share with you, but I'm gonna share this story instead. There was several years ago, and I shared this so many times in my presentation, I was traveling the country and I was in Baltimore, Maryland. And I'll never forget when I was in Baltimore, Maryland, I was on Facebook and I was reading the story. And the story was the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean. And it was a phenomenal story because there's a major lesson in this story. And in the story, it talked about how there was a young person that had found out that their significant other had cheated on them. And they were bawling in tears and they were crying, and as they should. And they went to talk to their grandmother, and they're having a conversation with their grandmother. Their grandma says, "You know, I want you to sit right here." And so the young person sits in his feet, and they share with their story with the grandmother, and the grandmother starts boiling the water. And while the water is boiling, in my mind, I'm thinking the day is family reunion, but that's not what's going to happen. But as the water is boiling, they put the carrot in the water, and she asks the young girl, she says, "What does the carrot do?" And the young person says, "The carrot breaks." And the grandmother says, "Don't let the pressure challenge break you." Then she takes her egg and she puts the egg in the boiling water, and she says, "What does the egg do?" And the young person says, "Well, the egg gets hard and bitter." She says, "Don't let the egg make you hard and bitter." And then she takes a coffee bean and she puts the coffee bean in the boiling water. And she says, "What does the coffee bean do?" And she says, "Well, the coffee bean dissolves and makes coffee." She says, "You're absolutely correct." She said, "In your greatest challenge and your greatest obstacle, be the coffee bean. Be the person that uses the challenge in order to become that much more better." Now, at that point, I'm in my bed and I'm excited, like, man, powerful story, go grandma. But as I thought more about the story, there was one thing grandma was missing. What grandma forgot to integrate is that the coffee bean had to have the right perspective in order to use the pressure for its good. In essence, if the coffee bean doesn't have the right perspective, it can't turn a negative situation into a positive situation. It's one of the reasons I love this quote. It said, "Change your perspective and you can change the world." Because a lot of times our perspective is the key to growth, to learning lessons, and turning a bad into a good situation that can be transforming for other people. So be the person that leads with the right perspective. The final concept I'm gonna leave with you today, as it relates to the ABCs of leading through pain and staying motivated, is you got to create what I call a DMR. What is a DMR? A DMR is a daily motivational routine that consists of a set of habits, disciplines, or activities that not only enable you to win the day, but here it comes, they prepare you for the unexpected challenges. See, what I've learned in this life is there are days when I don't feel like getting out the bed. There are days I don't feel like going to work. And if any of you are in toxic environments, dealing with toxic leaders or toxic situations, or you felt betrayed or whatever the case may be, truth be told, we'll all be honest, you don't want to be in that place. I wouldn't want to be in that place. But in certain circumstances, you have no choice. You have to show up. You have to work. You have to be there. And what I've discovered, and I tell people all the time, is in order to win the day, because sometimes it takes one day, 1 hour, or 1 week at a time, you have to implement habits that are going to strengthen you, that are going to empower you, that are going to motivate you to continue to move forward. And then on the flip side, there's also moments where there's unexpected, when you get a phone call, when you have a challenge, such as me today. I'm ready to do a virtual webinar in my house, got the studio set up, and I'm ready to go. And all of a sudden, the Wi-Fi goes down. And now I'm like trying to out, what am I going to do? And so then I go to our clubhouse, and now I'm in the hotel on a table right now. Y'all can see the background, nothing special, just giving my presentation because I had to figure it out. I had to motivate myself and I had to win the day despite the unexpected challenges. You know what I discovered? Discovered life brings unexpected challenges. I discovered there's moments I don't feel like leading. I don't feel like getting out of bed, but I've discovered it's my habits, it's my routine, it's my discipline that enables me to continue to move forward. When I started this presentation, I shared with you how I was unexpectedly hit with the news that my grandmother had passed away. And as I shared so many times over and over, it was painful, it was challenging, and it was hard. And not only did I have to activate purpose and have the right perspective, but I had to integrate some habits. I had to have a routine. I had to wake up and walk everywhere. I had to work out. I had to pray. I had to worship. I had to talk to friends. I had to watch videos. I had to do things that would enable me to continue moving forward despite everything that was going on. And I'm happy here to tell you today, are you still grieved? Yes. Are you still going through pain? Yes. Do you still shed a tear? Yes. But I'm still able to empower my son, my daughter, and my wife. I'm still able to empower the students on campuses all across the country, virtually in person. We still had one of our greatest conferences ever in April in the midst of another storm. That lives were changed, lives were transformed, because I made up in my mind that I was going to embrace the challenge and I was going to integrate certain principles and concepts that would help me to cope, navigate, and persevere through a painful experience while yet leading as well. As I get ready to close today, I want to first and foremost thank you all so much for hearing what I had to say. And on the screen, you'll see a Taka dot. This is one of my assessment things that I do. And I am aware that you may be on your phone or your computer, but you can type in talk.ac.drj and put in leader. When you put in leader, you're going to get a free gift from me, freebie. It's going to be a free 3 chapters of my newest book called Red Leadership. But more importantly, for those that may be interested in possibly bringing this message to your school or bringing this message to your community, or maybe interested in some of my other programs on emotional intelligence or inclusive leadership, or how to use your leadership experience as a student as a launching pad for career success, or self-care, or how to increase retention and engagement amongst your student organizations. I have a variety of programs that I know will be very beneficial to your campus community, your students, or your professionals. And so if you fill out that contact information, a member of our team will get to you within 48 hours. But again, I want to first and foremost challenge you to share this message, share it with other people, and do your part to continue to make an impact and navigate the challenges that we all face as leaders. As I said again, we're all going to face challenges. We're all going to face obstacles. There's going to be moments we're going to be ready to give up. But what I do know is it's not easy, it's tough, and it can be hard. But there are principles, there are speakers, and there are people out there that can help us to push through. And so my word to you as we get ready to move to our next speaker, push, push, and push again. Well, as I'm sweating, I'm not gonna keep you waiting too much more longer. I'm gonna move into our next speaker. Again, she's from Southern California, and she's been a speaker at Circular Change, really, I feel like almost 10 years. And she's an incredible speaker. She has an incredible message. I promise you, you will not leave the same when she finishes with her word of wisdom for us today. And so without further ado, please give it up for my friend, Tiana Sanchez. Tiana, it's in your hands.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm honestly say I'm calling an audible right now. I had a presentation totally prepared on conscious leadership, and after hearing Joshua's presentation, I said, you know what? There was a sentiment, this desire to say, okay, you need to pivot and talk about a topic that's somewhat related. So just so you don't feel gypped, I just typed in the chat box a link. If you go there, it's a resource vault on my website. If you scroll all the way down, you'll actually get a copy of the white paper essentially on the topic of conscious leadership. But I believe that something inside of me says, Tiana, you need to pivot because there's something in what Joshua was saying that you need to share. So I'm going to talk about the undefeatable leader. And I'm going to talk about how to lead people after a crisis. And this is a full presentation I just delivered last week. It's brand new, but I want to share it with you all because I believe there was something in what Joshua was saying, and I was led to to pivot in the last minute. So bear with me, but I put it in the chat so you can have it and you won't feel like you've been gypped. But everything on this page, you get to know a little bit about me, what I've done, what I've accomplished. But the most important thing is that I am an ex-hot dogger, and you're probably like, what is that? If you're from California, have you ever been to Santa Monica or gone to a hot dog and a stick? That's what that is. We had these really cool uniforms. We made fancy lemonade and corn dogs. That is where I got my start. And I owe a lot to that experience. I believe I don't know that I would be where I am today without having that experience. So I'm going to lead you in the next 15 minutes through this conversation of the undefeatable leader and what it looks like to lead people after a crisis. Joshua talked about pain. We talked about the unorthodox leader in the previous speaker, and I really think this is a nice segue. So we won't get through all of these little pit stops in our journey, but this is a full program. So if you're interested and want to bring this back to your campus or organization, feel free. But I am going to cover a couple of things. I'm going to talk about self-leadership. So you see along the path toward the right, self-leadership. Hopefully this will increase your awareness. And then we're going to talk about suboptimal and optimal leadership behaviors. So in this concept of the undefeatable leader, there's two types of leaders that I want us to talk about. One is leading self, and one is leading others. You can't lead others if you don't first lead yourself. What does that mean, Tiana? If you've ever been on an airplane, you know the flight attendants are giving you the lowdown of what to do in case there's an emergency. What are you supposed to do first? Someone type it in the chat box. What do they say with the oxygen mask, right? What do they tell you to do? I'm going to call on somebody in the room. Who's in the room? I saw Abigail earlier. What do we got in the room? What do we do first? Christine, Cindy, David, James. What do they tell us, Morgan, Nasir, Montgomery? They tell us to put on our oxygen mask first before we help other people. And that's what we have to do as leaders. We have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves first before we begin to help other people. And as leaders, we don't always get that care and concern. We don't wake up and people say, well, how are you doing today? What do you have going on in your life? So I want to talk about that. So in leading self, we have these two elements: assessing the impact of a potential crisis and breaking down what I call suboptimal leadership behaviors. And so we're going to talk about the assessing the impact first. So I am trying to get down with this whole AI. So I actually Googled using Chat GPT. If you've ever heard of Chat GPT, it's that new AI where it's like Google, but better. And you can type in something and it gives you this whole definition or pictures or images or whatever. So I actually went to Chat GPT and I said, what is a self-leader? And I actually thought the definition was pretty cool. Now, this is the shortened version of it, but I'm going to read you the long version, which it says, a self-leader is an individual who takes charge of their own life goals and actions and takes responsibility for their personal and professional development. They are proactive, motivated, and disciplined, and possess the ability, keyword ability, to manage their emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in a way that supports their goals and aspirations. It goes on to say that self-leadership involves a range of skills for, to be exact, self-awareness, self-motivation, self-regulation, and self-direction. So I would ask you, where are you the strongest and where are you the weakest? You can type it in or just kind of think through that. Self-leadership is essential for success in today's fast-paced environments where individuals need to be able to navigate complex challenges and take ownership of their career and lives. By cultivating self-leadership skills, confidence and resilience is improved, as well as their decision-making abilities. So when we think of self-leadership, it encompasses all of that. Now, I'm a person that does not like to fly. Joshua was talking about all this world traveling he was doing, and I was like, ooh, that sounds exciting, but that's not my story. I am not a person who enjoys flying. I've traveled many places, but I do not enjoy the experience. I remember one year in 2009, I'm celebrating with my friends, my girlfriends. I say, hey, let's take a trip to New York. In the wintertime, nobody told me that traveling to New York in the wintertime was probably not ideal. But we booked the tickets, booked the flight, and we're traveling to New York. We get there, great. Stay a few days. We're on our way back home. When we start coming back home, the weather starts to change and it's starting to have a little bit of a snow flurry. And I'm already starting to get a little bit anxious knowing that we have to fly in this weather. But we get on our plane. They tell us the flight is delayed, so we're sitting on the tarmac for 2 hours. I'm already a nervous wreck, but I'm okay. My friends are with me. I'm good to go. We finally take off. The pilot comes on the intercom, maybe a few minutes into the flight, and he says something like this. He says, good evening, passengers. I just want to let you know, because at this point, we're experiencing a little bit of turbulence. And I say a little bit, but for me, it was major turbulence. And I call it the dips, when you start to drop in altitude and you're in the sky and the flight and you just drop. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you experience that or you know. So the pilot gets on, he says, passengers, I just want to let you know that I've talked with the other flights ahead of us, and they're experiencing turbulence as well. And we're probably going to experience this for the duration of our flight. Now, we just got on the flight. It had been maybe 5 to 10 minutes, right, Vanessa? And how long is a flight from New York to LA? Maybe about 5 or 6 hours. So immediately I am entering in a personal crisis. And when you experience a personal crisis, as you can see on the board here, you're afraid. You start to panic. You start to have a level of fear, right? And in right dead center is illogical approach to decisions. I kid you not, hand to God, as soon as the pilot said that, I immediately said to myself, okay, how am I going to parachute off of this flight? And I literally thought that I was going to be able to escape this flight. Now, where was I going to get a parachute? I don't know. How was I going to escape the flight? I have no idea. But it was an irrational, illogical thought to a decision, to a solution, because I was experiencing a personal crisis. Now, when we think of business, we may think of other personal crises, right? Maybe a supply chain disruption, a decrease in productivity, communication challenges, a loss of revenue. There's a list that goes on when we think of crisis when it comes into our work environment that we might experience. There's two types of crisis. Now, I was experiencing a personal crisis, but there's other crises externally that may have a greater impact. And I want to introduce to you that there's a lowercase c and a capital C crisis. The capital C crisis is essentially those events that cause a major disturbance. When you think of a capital C crisis, what do you immediately think of? And I want you to think beyond COVID. Yeah, we know COVID, but think of other things. What about a financial crisis? What about a natural disaster? What about a social crisis? Something that happens, right? That's major. Yes, cancer. That's a major and a personal crisis, right? When we think of a lowercase c crisis, we might think of things that are maybe have a moderate to low disturbance, right? It may be something like, oh my gosh, I have to print this document and we ran out of ink, or there's no more paper in the printer. That might be a lowercase c crisis, right? But there is something that I recently learned about at the World Economic Forum. They introduced this new word, and it's basically called a polycrisis. It's when multiple events happen, and that the culmination of events happening together is greater outweighs each individual crisis. So I'm here to say that as a leader, you may be experiencing a polycrisis. You may have a natural disaster or some kind of external crisis that you're dealing with, while at the same time dealing with a personal crisis. And I want to say, as we talk about the undefeatable leader, crisis is an acute emotional upset, according to the CDC. It's manifested in our ability or inability to cope emotionally, cognitively, or behaviorally, and to solve problems as we usually would. Keyword on usually. Remember my illogical thought to decisions? Outside of a crisis, I probably wouldn't have thought about parachuting out of an airplane, but in a state of crisis, that is where my mind went. And so I believe that as leaders, we may often enter into a polycrisis and we don't address them. Uppercase C crisis says, I feel angry, anxious, and afraid, and I don't know when or if this is going to pass. The lowercase c says, I feel anxious, afraid, concerned, but I know this will pass. So there's a difference of when we experience, and our body reacts in different ways, biologically, mentally, emotionally, and physically. A friend of mine, she's a doctor. Her name is Dr. Natalie Parks, and she's a colleague. She's a behavior analyst. She's also a licensed psychologist. She's a program director of applied behavior analysis program at St. Louis University. And I asked her and I said, how does our body react when we're entering into a crisis? And she went on to tell me these are some of the things that happens. You feel anxious, and we probably know that, but your stomach starts to hurt. You might get headaches. You might have less tolerance for difficult situations. You may get chronic fatigue or depression. So we think about these things and we might just shrug them off and we move on. And we say, oh, well, there's so many more other things that I have to endure. I'll put my well-being to the side. We also may experience things again outside of the biological, emotional, mental state, and we may begin to look at these other areas. We may oversimplify messages. As soon as a message comes in about a crisis, we may tend to believe the first message that we receive. We may lean on and trust lean on our beliefs and trust what we know to be true. We may also become skeptical, or we might be the converse of that and be highly trusting. So there's a ton of different ways that we tend to react during a crisis. But I believe when we go through these stages that we experience something called the AHM. And I think it's a disorder that many of us experience when we're going through crisis. And I'm going to call it's a hot mess disorder. And it is at the point where you realize you're going through a polycrisis, where you have capital C, lowercase c crises that you're going through, that you may feel like you need to the fight, flight, or flee, that you've been suffering in this space and you're not sure how to get out of it. And you're leading a team, you're leading a company, you're leading a group, and yet you're experiencing this polycrisis. So how do we get through this AHM disorder, right? What does that actually look like? Well, I believe after a crisis, there's certain skill sets that we need to look, behavioral skill sets for leaders that are optimal during the crisis, but become suboptimal after the crisis. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples with the time that I have left when I say suboptimal and optimal leadership behavior. So again, what we experience after a crisis, we may feel the desire to want to get back to normal. How many of us felt that? If you've been a part of a natural disaster here in California, we have a lot of earthquakes and other parts of it. We actually now have tornadoes, apparently. So there's different crises that we may experience, but there's this desire and deep yearning to want to be able to get back to normal. And then we have to also consider after a crisis, what are the long-term effects that this has on me as a leader, as an individual, as a human? And so these are kind of the things that we have to consider when we're looking at what we experience after crisis. So here's an example of what I believe we actually need. During a crisis, we need leaders, and you tell me if you agree or disagree, that are bold, quick, and decisive, willing to take ownership of the risks that they take. I often think of Captain Sully, who landed the plane on a Hudson. He was a high decisive individual. He didn't have time to consult with anybody on the ground floor. He didn't have time to say, hey, I just want to check in with everybody to see, what decision we should make. He had to react very rapidly, quickly, decisively, and take ownership of the decisions that he was making at that time. I believe we need leaders during a crisis that reflect a sense of urgency, that they have that pace, that fast pace, that they are maybe cautiously skeptical. They're not going to just take something verbatim, that they're going to investigate it, and that they're also steadfast, tough-minded, and not easily persuaded. But after a crisis, here's where I want to challenge you and kind of let this be a fluid discussion. After a crisis, I believe leaders need to be assertive. They need to be deliberately decisive, maybe not quick and bold, but what about some input? Maybe I should ask a couple of people for input before I make a decision, seeking guidance on making the right choice, a style that works more steady rather than quickly. We also need leaders that are transparent, trusting, and also those that take an approach that meet the needs of others and that are mildly accommodating. So during a crisis, there's a certain set of leadership behaviors we need. After a crisis, there's a certain set of leadership behaviors that we need. And I often feel that leaders today have one style that they use for every situation. And that's where we have lack of trust. We have inefficient leaders, poor leaders. And this, I believe, if we learn to recalibrate, we can be better leaders. So let me share this model with you. I'm going to kind of skip through because, as I said, I pivoted today because I think this is something that I want to share with you. So I'm going to share with you a model, and this is it. It's called our suboptimal model explained. So in the chart that I showed you and kind of the description that I gave you, there's certain leadership behaviors that during a crisis are great. They're optimal, but after they're suboptimal. So during a crisis, we see effective leadership behaviors. Maybe I need someone who's commanding, who's bold, who's a decision maker, who's maybe somewhat guarded and skeptical and tough-minded. And you can see that on the left side, the effectiveness of this style goes up during a crisis. But when the crisis is averted or ended, those same leadership behaviors are seen differently. So tough-minded becomes, oh, this leader is disagreeable. This leader is now pessimistic. This leader is now risky and too adventurous. And now they're forceful. And so it's interesting that those same leadership behaviors that we desire, that we needed during the crisis, are seen as suboptimal after the crisis. So as a leader, you have to recalibrate. And the way that you recalibrate is asking yourself this question: will the leadership style or approach provide the right amount of care and guidance that allows others to operate at their most optimal selves? Care and guidance. So if you use this as a litmus test, you can begin to recalibrate. So here's an example with this last one. I'm gonna give you a full-on example of how to recalibrate. So we have our suboptimal behaviors here. We have our optimal behaviors here. And let's look at it at recalibrating. If I'm a commanding style, I say, do it because I said so. I demand compliance. I get the job done, but it's at a cost. So here's how you recalibrate. Instead of being commanding leader, be an assertive leader. Not do it because I said so, but this needs to get done. But here's, let me tell you why. So provide an explanation. I'm not demanding compliance, but I'm directing compliant behavior. It's different. I don't want to just get the job done at any cost, but I want to get the job done with trust intact. And I think Joshua talked about trust. So I just want to share with you that this idea of becoming an undefeatable leader is focusing on you leading self first and then leading others, being able to manage your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors with a willingness to learn, adapt, and change circumstances, as well as being an inspirational leader, recalibrating. So you're providing the right amount of care for individuals so that they can be supported and lead as their most optimal selves. So I share this with you today as an audible, and I'm sure Joshua's okay. We know each other, so I think he trusts in my audible today. But I did post in the chat, as someone asked, for the link of the Conscious Leader. But I do hope that this message blessed you today on the undefeatable leader. Joshua, I'm going to give back to you.
Awesome. Awesome. I think I'm coming back. Am I coming back up, Mike? Oh, here we are. Yeah. Awesome. That was phenomenal, Tiana. And I think it was a great segue, by the way. I think it was incredible. Becoming the unstoppable leader after crisis. I mean, like, boom, it was just phenomenal. Thank you so much, Tiana. And like I said, with Dr. Jermaine Davis, really quickly, Tiana, for people that want to book you or want to figure out how they can bring you to their campus, their organization, is there anywhere they need to go? Just to make sure they're very clear about that. Oh, your voice.
Just tapped in the chat box, tianasanchez.com, super easy. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm also very visible on LinkedIn, so would love to connect with you.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Hey, if you don't know, this has been a phenomenal time already. Dr. Jermaine dropped the mic. Tiana dropped the mic. Our last speaker, he's definitely no stranger to leadership development on college campuses all across the country. We're actually part of a mastermind group of speakers, and he's an incredible facilitator, leader, extraordinaire. Just phenomenal on so many levels. And so I know he's going to bring us to the promised land as we get to our last presentation of the day. Coming from New York City, we always said, I forgot what we used to call each other, Tom, our brother, I forgot what we called it, something. But either way, please give it up for my good friend, Tom K. Swift Kick, take it away. It's in your hands. Represent. Here he is.
Josh, I'm taking the ball from you and I appreciate it. The very first thing though, Josh, is I want to say, and everyone in the chat box, can you just give a shout out to Josh for not only making this happen, but also the resilience, the recovery that he's able to do by showing up in a hotel lobby to make this conference happen. Josh, man, we have some stories. I once did a virtual program from a rest stop on the highway in the back of my car, my rental car. I set up a little green screen. I'm like, here we go. Hashtag COVID. That's all I got to say. Like we got stories to tell. I can't wait for our next bonfire. But Josh, man, appreciate you. And the other speakers, I don't know how to follow everyone that prior, because you brought your A team here. So first off, I want to thank everyone for being here towards the end. And I'm just curious, if you could summarize how you're feeling right now in just one word, your thoughts, your emotions, your physiology, all in one word. Go ahead and drop that into the chat box. How would you describe that feeling that you're in right now? Oh, I love this. Inspired is showing up right away. Some of you are privately messaging me, inspired. Someone said tired privately. I understand. We haven't had our second cup of coffee yet. All right, I feel like I got a good grasp of this group. I understand who I'm talking to here today. So I'm actually really interested in this question. You know, when you came into this room, imagine there was music playing, and all of a sudden on the screen, this screen pops up and it says dance floor theory. And you're thinking to yourself, wait a second, Tom, you're going to try and get me to dance as the ending of this seminar here in front of my coworkers if you're at work. Raise your hand, by the way, if that is you. Okay, I think there's like 2 of you raising your hand right now. Now, let's be honest. How many of you, you know, when you came in, you heard maybe some music playing, and now this slide pops up, and you're like, dance floor theory, like there's a chance I might get to dance, and you're not really excited about that. Raise your hand if that is you, or just send me that message. Okay, that seems like most of you. Who, by the way, who just doesn't like to raise your hand? Where are you at? These are my people. I'm in the back. I get it. I understand. All right, so just so you know, those of you who want to dance, I may challenge you in just a few moments here to get up and make a move happen. But those of you who don't want to dance, don't worry, sit tight, pull out your cell phone cameras later, hit record, upload it, hashtag, upload it later, hashtag blackmail, whatever you want to do. But to start off, take a look at these 3 images. You should be familiar with some of these, but starting with the very first one at the top here, just out of curiosity, I'm just like, think about it for a moment. If you've ever been to a dance before, I mean, in your entire lives, have you ever been to a dance? Now visualize for a moment if you've ever been to a good dance before. Okay, now think about what that dance might be like. You know, what was the lighting like? What was the music like? Who was grinding? No, sorry, don't go there. Bad memories, bad memories. All right, now also think about if you've ever been to a bad dance before. Okay, think about what that dance like. You know, you look out on that dance floor. It's so empty on that dance floor. It's like Taylor Swift's Love Life. There's no one there. Oh, hitting hard for the Swifties out there. Okay, so we've all been to good dances and bad dances. If you were to pick which one of these right here is the better dance, when I say go, drop your answer into that chat box, or you can private message me or write it down on a piece of paper, but quickly put your answer in as to which one you think is the better dance between A and B. I'm seeing a lot of A's come in, they're flying in. Several of you, one of you messaged me privately, B here. All right, I see a lot of A's. So let's break it down. You know, oftentimes when I hear people choose this B dance, the first thing they go is, well, Tom, I'm a giant in the center of the dance floor. Game on. I'm going to make this dance happen. And then those of you who chose the A dance, oftentimes when I hear you choose the A dance, you're like, well, you look up, you see these 2 guys hanging upside down from the chandelier, and you're like, game on, that's my jam. But what I didn't tell you up though is that every blue line up here represents a relationship or a connection that happened on that dance floor. And you should actually already intuitively know what makes a good dance. Because imagine you walk onto a dance and you look around and nobody knows each other. The DJ could put on the hottest song and chances are very few people would dance. But if you walk onto another dance floor and you look around and you see all your friends and you're like, hey, 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 the DJ could put on the chicken dance song. And you know one of your friends would find a chair, stand on that chair and be like, I love this song. And you'd be like, come on down, we're going home, get your life together. But what mattered more than the lights, the music, and the sound were the friends, connections, and relationships. Which brings me to the very first lesson of dance floor theory, which is on a dance floor, the more friends you have on a dance, the more fun that dance is going to be and the longer it's going to last. So if you think about it for a moment, that's the first lesson of dance floor theory. Now that we've kind of gotten that out of the way, I can go to the second image on the screen, which is right here. And if you take your hands, and I can't see you, but if you take your hands and put it against your head and just repeat it for me, say, I am a genius. Let me hear you. Okay, I think I heard some of you yelling that. Some of you just got called out by your coworkers. They're like, why are you talking to yourself again? And so inside our brain, we have pieces of memory. The way we connect to that memory is through things called neural pathways. The more number of neural pathways we have to a piece of memory, or the thicker that neural pathway is, the easier it is to retrieve that piece of memory. I feel like I'm getting like the whoa classroom energy vibes from you right now. So let me give you a visual of your brain, not on drugs. This is your brain right here. Where up here are the easiest to retrieve pieces of memory? And I think if you were here right now, you'd be yelling out somewhere in the center, which I knew it, you're geniuses, which brings me to the last and final image of the screen here, which is this one down at the bottom. Go ahead and give it up. I want to hear through the screen. I want to hear you give it up for your school, your university, your college, your organization right now. Okay, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm just making this up now. But here's the thing. I want you to think about your school, your organization, your res hall in a completely different way. No longer is it a school, organization, res hall, a college. It is now a massive brain. And you can almost hear this brain as if you're going like down the hallway going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And inside our brain, no longer do we have students walking around or members of our organization or residents in our res hall. We now have pieces of memory that this brain is never ever trying to forget. What I hope to show you by the end of my time here is that this right here is the better dance. This is the better brain. This is ultimately the best type of club, organization, res hall, college campus, or team, cohort, company culture. All of it plays. This is the idea that dance floors and campuses actually operate the exact same way. So I already gave you lesson number 1, which is the more friends you have on a dance, the more fun you're going to have on that dance. So now I get to go to the second lesson of dance floor theory. To set up lesson number 2. Many years ago, before COVID, a friend of mine got a text message, and on the text message it said, "Meet in Union Square Park in New York City. When the clock strikes 3, pull out your pillow and begin pillow fighting." Now, he didn't know how many got that text message. He didn't know how many are actually going to show up, but he's the kind of person that when he gets that kind of information, he's like, game on, I'm going. So he takes his pillow, puts it in his black plastic bag. He heads down to Union Square Park and the pillow fight happens. Here's what the park looked like at 12 noon that day. And here's what it looked like at 3 o'clock when the pillow fight happened. Look at this. 5,000 people show up for this pillow fight. And if you looked at this just like a dance floor, you would see it looks just like a dance floor. Because if you went to the top of this and looked at it from top down, where are the most engaged dancers on this dance floor? I'm sure you're pointing somewhere right here. You can see the feathers flying around. And then the further you get away from the center, the less involved they are, the less engaged they are. On dance floor theory, we talk about dance floor theory. Lesson number 2 says that there are different levels of, scoot the chair, different levels of engagement. Because no longer on a dance floor do we recognize that you're either dancing or you're not. Because on a dance floor, just like this pillow fight, we see that there's a trailing amount of engagement from the most engaged to the least engaged. And we're going to give them numbers right now. The people over here are 5s, our most engaged people, going our 4, 3, 2, 1s, our neutrals. Our neutrals, they're the ones, by the way, on campus that are your car to class students. They're the ones who walk through the hallway with their head down like this. And if you ask them what's going on, they may look like this, some sort of zombie child. But what they're saying to themselves so often within your culture, within your community, within your organization, they're saying to themselves, this is stupid, I'm bored, and I'm tired. That's what we call the narrative of the neutral. The least engaged student or the least engaged person on that dance floor is called a neutral, an N. And 1s, 2, 3, 4, 5s, and 5s are our most engaged. They are our fully participants outside the classroom. Look, all the research shows that the more involved you are outside the classroom, the higher your grades are, your graduation rate is, grades, graduation rate, and your successes after you graduate. All that comes from you being in the center of the dance floor and being the 5 on that dance floor. So we've already covered lesson number 1, which says more friends equals more fun. Lesson number 2 says there's different levels of involvement. But here's lesson number 3, and this is where most people, most leaders mess up, is that everyone has potential. Sure, you're going to see people that look like this within your community. They still have potential, regardless of where they're at. But here's where most leaders make a mistake. This is where most OLs make a mistake. RAs make a mistake. Student leaders make a mistake. Campus leaders make a mistake. is that engagement is a process. Don't try and drag someone from the edge to the center until they're ready. And far too often, and actually this is for the whole group. I'm thinking about this. If you ever thought about society as a whole, what percentage of society are introverts versus extroverts? Did you know it's about a third, a third, a third? And you're like, well, wait, Tom, you just gave two options. Why is there another third? That math doesn't work. A third are introverts, a third are extroverts, and a third are what are called ambiverts. They're somewhere in between. And here, I'm going to talk to the introverts in this room for just a moment. Have you ever walked into a room and had an extroverted leader come up to you and be like, does that make you feel more engaged, more likely to jump in and be like, I love this place, or maybe take a few steps back? My guess is, for most introverts I talk to, when an extrovert comes at them with all their extroverted energy, it usually causes them to step backwards, not forwards. So we have another lesson in dance floor theory, which is don't be a scary six. A scary six is when a leader has more extroverted energy than the moment calls for, meaning they treat the entire world as if everyone else is extroverted just like them. And because the entire world is extroverted like them, then all they need to do is get this person, this introvert, to yell, scream, and dance as loudly as they, and that means they're engaged. So we started on a dance floor, then we went to a pillow fight. Now I want to come to your campus, your organization, your res hall, your orientation, your community, your employment. What percentage on a campus do you think are disengaged, uninterested in any of the activities you're going to host? Think about it for a moment. Think about it. The answer, according to the National Survey on Student Engagement, they found that 60 to 84% of students will never participate in a college-sponsored activity. 60 for 84% of students. Think about it for a moment. We have a bad dance with a small number of people in the middle and a huge number of people on the outside. And a good dance has an equal level of engagement throughout. And if that's a good dance, that means that's a good campus. And if that's a good campus, that means that this is again, I can't hear you, but it is a leadership opportunity. I know some of you are like, Tom, bad campus. No, a leadership opportunity. And if you take a pie slice, it looks like this, 60% down at the bottom. These are our neutrals. Our goal is to get to a campus, an organization, a culture that looks like this. Now, up until this point, we've talked about how you're either involved or you're not. You're a part of it or you're not. And I hope at the end of my time here that you recognize that in your community, your organization, your campus, that there's different levels of involvement. Each level thinks in a different way and needs to be interacted with in a different way. Starting at the very bottom, these are our neutrals. And if you attached a word that described what was going on inside their brain, they might go like this, they cross their arms, they go, meh, try to get me to participate. Then once you got the neutrals, the next step are the ones. The ones stop going meh, 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 and they actually look up and go, something got them to think from car to class, class to class, class back to car. Somewhere in that space right there got them to stop going meh, 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 and actually look up and go, Then you move to your twos. Your twos say, what's in it for me? These are your free pizza people. They will show up to anything as long as there's something for them. So if you got the first three levels, and by the way, if you're taking notes, quickly grab these notes right here. I'm not sure what happened to my screen right here, but we got some weird glitching going on. But these are the first three levels. Now, if the twos show up to the party, the threes, the fours, and the fives host the party. The threes say, what am I capable of? Fours say, what's next for me? And fives say, how can I help? These are your levels of engagement in terms of what they're thinking. Now, here's the thing. Your current activities right now do an amazing job at hitting the 1 through the 5s. The problem is this isn't what your organization, your community, your res hall, your orientation looks like. This is actually what it looks like. Meaning 60% are down at the bottom going meh, meh, meh. But we're spending all of our time and energy trying to engage this group. And then we're like, why does no one show up to our events? Because 60 to 84% never will. They will never show up to your activities. So I want to now show you how to engage those people. In my final moments here with you, how do you engage those people? Starting at the very bottom, the neutrals, you have to get their attention. In the world of dance floor theory, we call those blender events. I don't have time to talk about blender events here, but blender events are our activities that engage the neutrals. We bring the activity to them. Then the ones, you have to build the connection. This is all about building a connection with them. The twos, you have to give them value, which, by the way, there are 4 frees. There are 4 frees you can give the twos. The first free we already mentioned earlier is food. Who can guess the other 3? The other 3, let's see if someone got it. I'll tell you quickly. The second free is swag, t-shirts, buttons, stickers, whatever. The third free is money. Just show me the money. It can be a gift card. It can be money. The fourth free is a little tricky. It's credit. Goes on a resume, works for my class, extra at my class, works for my degree, certificate, whatever it might be. Those are the 4 frees that you can give to this group because they're asking themselves, what's in it for me? All right, then you move to your 3s. Your 3s, oh, you can't see it, but it says belonging. They want to belong. This is the first time they're feeling the idea of being a part of something bigger than themselves. Then you go to the 4s and they want responsibility. They want to start doing things. They want to start like helping you out, helping the organization out. And then lastly, the 5s want ownership. They want to run the show. They want to run your meeting, run your event, run your organization. Let them do that. So now you have the 5 levels and you have the 6 levels of what they're thinking, and you understand how to engage those 6 levels. We also talked about scary 6s, which is the 7th level. And we also, we didn't talk about the negative Nellies, which are the ones who are actively pulling people off your dance floor, which is a whole other conversation that we won't get to today. But if I'm leaving you here with 3 things, I want to leave you with these final 3 things. The first thing is the hardest step on the engagement pyramid is to get someone to go from meh to In dance floor theory, we call that an X+1 moment, math anxiety. I see it in some of your faces right now. You're like, Tom, don't do math. It's too late in the afternoon. X+1 is getting someone to go from meh to The second thing I want to tell you is that maybe it's not about marketing. Maybe it doesn't matter how many flyers, posters, emails, Facebook events you send out. What's going to matter most on a dance floor are the strength of the relationship. Then what's going to matter most in your organization are the strength of those relationships. And then the third and final thing I want to share is that there is so much dance floor theory content that we cannot get here today. If this is something you would love to learn more about, there is an online training that we have built out where we go through all of this content for you, your campus, your leaders, so that they can self-guide through with surveys, with assessment, with quizzes, and super interactive videos throughout. If that's something you're interested in, join, click that, send me a message. We'll see if we can connect you with that. Lastly, my final thing, and Josh, I'm going to bring you back on the screen after this. We wrote 2 Amazon best-selling books on college success. First Year Student, First Year Success is the 27 tips you need. And then this one's inspiration. It's quotes for everything you could deal with in college. And every page is beautifully designed up. If you find me on YouTube, and you find a video and watch one of the videos and leave a comment, and then at the end of that comment, say that you were in this session, like somehow let me know. If you just like drop Josh's name, by the way, you can drop Josh's name at anything and it gets you access. You can go to the Lakers game and be like, I know Josh, and you get in. You could go to Benihana's and be like, I know Josh, you get the VIP room. So if you drop Josh's name on my YouTube, after you leave a comment on a video, I'm going to choose 2 of you, and we're going to send you these books for free so that you can have them, and then you can get a copy of that yourself. With that, I want to thank you all for letting me have a chance to introduce you to Dance Floor Theory, which is our leadership training program that helps leaders to better engage and retain their members, their e-board, and their leaders. With that, Josh, passing back to you. I want to thank you so much for bringing me in, Josh.
No, thank you so much for coming, Tom. And real quick, Tom, I know you already let people know if they want to book you, where do they go specifically?
Yeah, if you Google Tom, just Tom. That's it. I'm like, no. Swift Kick is the company. Swift Kick is the company. But if you find me through YouTube, you can find me that way. If you look up free hugs, you're going to find out how I broke a Guinness World Record for most number of hugs by one person in 1 minute. And you can watch that on YouTube. I've done it twice now, going for a third time.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I just want to say first and foremost, thank you, Tom, Jermaine, Tiana. I mean, they just dropped the mic, y'all. I'm not gonna even lie to y'all. Like, I knew they were good, right? But I mean, they just dropped the mic. Like, I mean, I don't even know. I'm like, I'm gonna put a LinkedIn post. Y'all missed it. Y'all need to tell y'all people, y'all missed it. If you know someone, they really did miss it. I mean, it's so amazing to me. Like, this was just powerful. I'm gonna do another one. I'm just like, I'm gonna do another. This is so powerful and so rich. And I just encourage y'all to tell people about it, because I'm literally gonna send an email out. You missed it. Here go the recording. We still gonna help you out. But like, it was just powerful. Y'all did an amazing job. And I'm just sitting here like, honestly, Chandra, I'm like, man, I know so many dope speakers. I'm like,
Yeah,
man, I know so many dope speakers. Like, and I'm not talking about average. I mean, like, dope, So I'm just so grateful for all of you. Again, make sure you all connect with all the speakers, connect with us via LinkedIn. And again, look out, we're gonna be doing more events for sure. And Tom, I was just thinking like, I'm thinking like retention, engagement. I don't know. I've just got all these ideas and stuff in my mind. And so it was just great. It was great. I have nothing else to say. Through all the chaos that I went through to get to this point, it was definitely well worth it. I'll tell you that much. I feel like, they say, you feel like when you go to church, they say you feel fed. I feel fed and I feel full. And I just feel grateful for all of you. So thank y'all so much. Again, make sure y'all all reach out to these wonderful speakers on LinkedIn. If you connect me, I'm going to do a post. But thank you all so much. Since you're all here, anybody want to say any last word? A last word before we get out of here? Tiana, Tom, Dr. Jermaine, anything you want to say before y'all get out of here?
I'll say, I don't know if you were going to speak, Dr. Jermaine. Just take everything in, find 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets, and start there. Sometimes these events can be overwhelming, but just you can make it as small as you need to. Just start with 1, 2, maybe 3 action items and go from there.
Awesome. Jermaine, Tom, light bulb.
Whatever that light bulb moment was, that eureka moment, I agree with Tiana. And my thing is implementation. If you want transformation, you got to take one of those ideas and begin to apply it in your life. So I agree. Good to see you, Tom. Tiana, good to meet you.
I'm just saying, Tiana, Tiana, you and I better step up and get our doctorates next time around. We're going to show up strong next time. Tiana and I have a solid hair game going on, but we're going to get that doctorate next. We know.
We short out here. Well, I'll see y'all later. Y'all have a wonderful rest of the week. Go Lakers tonight. We're going to tie it up 1-1. All right, peace.